Welcome to Fintech Chatting, presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. Follow us on your favorite podcast player or Fintech Chatter TV on YouTube.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. Today, I've got somebody who's making their Fintech Chatter debut. It's Sharon Nouh from Prospend. Sharon, welcome to your Fintech Chatter debut.
Thank you, Dexter. I do feel like, it's a debut and so great to be here and nice to meet you again.
Yeah, and look, it's fantastic to be able to share your story because it's a one that I've been pushing a lot recently, certainly over this last 18 months. And it's great to have, I guess, essentially another bootstrapped fintech who's been doing a really good job and flying under the radar. And kind of now it's the 10-year overnight success story, which they're really my kind of favorite stories and to share with the listeners. Mainly because I feel that fintech in Australia is pretty unique, and we should be celebrating what I call real entrepreneurs a lot more. Do you want to tell people a little bit more about Prospend?
Yep, sure. So, Prospend as a business is in that category of business spend management, which is a bit interesting because that category came out about sort of a couple of years ago. And so before that, we actually didn't have a category that we sat into. Yeah. All of a sudden, I think it was Gartner came up with the category. So yay, we now have a category that we actually fit into. But what that means is that we automate and digitize and help businesses to manage their entire business spend. So think about credit card expenditure, staff reimbursements, out-of-pocket expenses, AP automation, paying of supplier invoices, budgeting, purchase orders, trip reconciliation. So the whole gamut of what a business will do with spending money, we can make that process digitized and automated for them and enable them to actually improve and be proactive about their spend.
So as you mentioned, it's a category that has kind of come about in this last couple of years, and we've seen, kind of businesses do elements of what you've talked about. But how did you get the inspiration to bring all of those elements together into one platform, essentially?
Yeah, so we started out as an expense tool. So that was our first iteration, and we were called Expense Manager at the time, which was
SEO heaven.
SEO heaven. Floated up on Google without having to spend any money. And obviously when we changed our name, that was it was a bit of a worry for us. But we started out as an expense manager because we were an expense tool. And then about a couple of years after that, I thought it could just make sense that we could automate another business pain point, which was, paying supplier invoices. So we set about building an invoice module, and then it just made sense to just continue to have all of those business processes managed under one platform. And that's what I think companies look for, is that they are looking for, just one solution to do multiple things rather than having to add on all these different apps, which, then you've got user training and integration issues with. So it really resonates, I think.
Yeah. And we've seen with that, you've got like Xero Marketplace, MYOB Marketplace. Mm-hmm. What gave you the confidence to take on kind of, those two, essentially really well-established, well-renowned businesses?
Yeah, well, we didn't actually take them on because we actually sit alongside them.
Right.
So we're kind of, we're on the Xero Marketplace and the MYOB Marketplace and the Sage. And so we sit very happily alongside those ERPs, the finance systems, because what they do is they do the general ledgers and the finance very, very well. But what they don't do very well is all of those processes that involve the end user. So we're kind of the workhorse and the workflow and the automation piece before it hits the ledgers. some of the ERPs do have, they might have an expense module or they might have a bit of an AP solution, but because it's not their core part of their platform, it's usually quite a watered down, module, and so they don't do that particularly well. So we do. And so we can then just simply feed that data into the ERP. So we have relationships with all the ERPs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so in terms of your kind of customer and user, are they a small business, medium size? Is it enterprise?
It's medium. So we've been very, very targeted at the mid-market. We do have some smaller customers, absolutely, and we have some very large enterprises. But we were always very focused on that mid-market. We thought that was a market that was underserved. Lots of people, with apps out there for the very small and micro businesses, and there was quite a lot of established players in the big enterprise area. But the mid-market was what we really aimed at. So when we say mid-market, of course, everybody has a different sort of thought about what is a mid-market business. For and the ATO qualified in one way by number of employees. Yeah. The ABS, the ATO qualified out by, revenue. Yeah. How we qualify it out is by the number of people that are spending money and wandering around and using our app, so number of active users, and then the number of invoices that they're probably processing. And so we generally sort of kick in with a real value proposition for companies that have got 20 plus employees running around spending money and are processing 500 plus invoices. Yeah. That's when your pain point starts to become, quite severe for a company. And then, of course, if you've got a company that's, processing, 2,000 or 3,000 invoices a month, if you're doing that manually, that's just, that's really hard these days.
Why do you think there's, and to my mind and from what I see, there seems to be this massive focus on that small end where you've got like sole traders and kind of one or two users. And as you said, massive focus on the big end of town. Why is it that there seems to be this lack of focus then around that mid-market level?
I think it's in two parts. I think as an app, you start off aiming at the SMEs, the very small, which is what we did, although our beta client, I have to say, was a global company, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So
I've not heard of them.
Exactly, as it turns out. So we actually launched with a product that was really aimed at the mid-market because of our beta client. But we did have originally a lot of the smaller companies using it. And so it's easier to capture those smaller companies. You don't have to have as many features. It's a small, they've only got basic needs. Yeah. So it makes sense if people are launching an app to start there. And then, of course, you've got, your big end of town, and they've been in business for years and years and years and years. And so they can capture that big end of town. But for the mid-market, you've got to be around for 4 or 5 years. Right. Not all of the startups will last that long, right? And so you've got to be around sort of 4 or 5 years to build out your product to actually service that mid-market. So I don't think it's that you think, I just am going to aim at the mid-market. You've got to be around long enough and you've got to focus your attention to be actually, and not everybody can actually achieve that.
And do you get there's a sense that businesses just want to see that you're kind of going to be around as well, as you pointed out, who wants another solution, and then that goes out of business and you're left having to find another solution again.
Look, initially when we were reaching out to the mid-market, we had to really convince them that we were going to be around for a long time. And so for our early customers, they really did take a bit of a leap of faith with us. But fortunately, because we were quite innovative with our tech, they needed to take that leap of faith. Yeah. Now, when we go out and talk to the mid-market, we don't have to qualify that out as much because they see all of the customers that are already dealing with us. They know we've been around for quite a number of years. So I think they have faith in us now that we are here to stay and we are not risky. So we're not a risky business anymore for the mid-market.
So I want to take you back to, the kind of origins of Prospend or Expense Manager at the time. How did you come up with the idea?
I'd like to say that it was all my own brilliant idea. but it wasn't. I obviously saw the pain point. I was in travel, so I had a couple of travel agencies,
Right.
and saw the pain point that companies had with all of their travellers running around with credit cards and spending money and not being able to manage that properly. So I did see what was happening overseas. A couple of products had launched overseas. One of them was Concur, one of our competitors. And I thought, you know what, we could do that here. We can build something here locally with local market conditions. And so I ended up selling my corporate travel agencies to a company called travel.com.au, who were the first online booking engine people in Australia. And that's where I got interested in tech and thought, you know, I could build this. So that was really how it started, was sort of obviously knowing that was a pain point, and then thinking, you know, is there a way that we can build a product to solve that?
So I want to just ask you about that statement that you made there. We can build this. Were you left to kind of eat your words a little bit once you kind of got into the process of building it? Or did you find that it actually was not as difficult a process?
I didn't find it that difficult, I'll be honest with you, Dexter, no, because it just seemed to me to be quite intuitive what we needed to do.
Right.
So I don't want to brag about it, but it was, you know, there were some obvious pain points that we could solve with automation. Some very, you know, bringing credit card data feeds in and giving them a mobile app to snap their receipts and matching them. That was sort of essentially the first product, was as limited as that. But that in itself was a game changer for businesses.
Yeah. Awesome. So talk me through kind of the early days then. How did you get the idea off the ground?
So as I said,
because you're not a tech person.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not a tech person. No. I hired a couple of developers, and I literally sat there and drew the screens, like literally drew each screen as I envisaged it, and then I got them to build those screens and put the underlying tech behind it. So the whole scope of the product was thought of by myself. So that in itself wasn't the tricky bit. The tricky bit was just paying for that, you know, and not being funded, you know. So literally, working for no money for a few years, you know, that was the hard bit.
So how long did you have to do that for?
As in with no money coming in, with no revenue.
Yeah.
I didn't pay myself a wage for quite a number of years. Just about all the revenue that we were bringing in was just going straight back into the product. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that must have been pretty difficult, you know, having a family and having mouths to feed.
Yes.
How on earth did you kind of keep it together?
Script and save.
Yeah.
Just literally script and save. You know, I mean, because we did launch with, a customer, and we did, you know, we obviously went out and you know, onboarded a number of customers. There was some revenue, but it was a matter of really making sure that most of what was coming in was going back into the business, and.
How did you get that first customer on board then?
I was very lucky, I have to say, because of my background in travel. I had a good friend that was the travel management company for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I was talking to him about, you know, what we were doing. And he said, look, I absolutely know a customer that, you know, desperately needs this. I'll introduce you. So I got introduced to, and I have to say, they took an absolute leap of faith, because I was one-man band, you know, that was it. But they saw the tech and they knew that this could be a game changer for their organisation. So they ran with it. So all power to them. And they're still one of our customers today. So
see, this is why I really wanted to share your story on the show, right? Because I think there's so much out there around this is how you should do it. And it's usually based around putting a pitch deck together, begging people for money, getting lots of money, and spending 3 years building something that nobody wants or needs.
I know. Yeah. It is. And I don't know. It is a weird sort of philosophy out there. And I recently went to a networking function, and there was a lot of young entrepreneurs in the room. I was And one of the girls asked me, what I did. I was asking her about her, what she was launching. And then she asked me about what I did. And we got talking and I said, she said, why are you here? And I said, look, I'm here because I've been working the business for years and years and years. And I've now actually got a good team of people around me. It's time for me to get out and meet other people, and network. And perhaps we might raise some money. I don't know any of the VCs here in the landscape, so that's the reason why I'm really making an effort to network. And she said, so you didn't know anybody? And she said, well, how did you grow the business? And I was just floored by that question. I said, because I went and looked for customers. And so that was completely lost on her.
Yeah.
So like you said, it was just that I think they have this thought that I'm just going to raise this money and the customers are just going to come. And it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So talk me through that process then of you going and finding customers. Was this like you literally pounding pavements?
Yeah. Cold calling, literally cold calling, thinking about the companies that I thought, would have that need and picking up the phone and speaking to them. So, I guess, back in the day, I don't know whether that still works that well these days because there's just sort of so many outreaches now to people. But at the time, it did work. Yeah. So, probably the first sort of 20 customers was all just pure boots on the ground.
Wow. This is almost like we're only talking the last decade, right?
Yes.
But it seems like a completely different time and era, right? Like I remember in the early 90s when I was, out of school, university, whatever, and looking for your first job. And it was literally that, right? Kind of going around and knocking on people's doors and sitting in office receptions and, what we call hustle these days.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. So Sharon, I guess with you starting the business and first time founder, there would have been a lot of lessons to learn along the way. Did you kind of just learn from mistakes or did you manage to find a mentor?
In two parts. Definitely learned by my mistakes, made lots of mistakes. And that's okay. Everybody should make mistakes because if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying new things, right? But I have had a couple of really wonderful mentors.
Yeah, but when you're paying for them yourself,
I know.
Right? You don't want to make too many, right?
Yeah, that's it. Not too many. Exactly. Yeah, otherwise they can be very expensive.
But that's the advice, folks. Make mistakes on somebody else's money, not your own. Then go out and start a business.
That's it. But I've had a couple of mentors, and that has really, really helped. And I wish I'd actually gone out and looked for mentors earlier in the piece instead of trying to do it all by myself, and I'm so goddamn independent. It was like, I can do this. But if I had have leaned on a couple of people throughout the journey, that would have been a lot better. Two of the people that have really helped me, one is a lady called Melissa Widner from Lighter Capital.
Been on the show.
Just an amazing woman who has really made a difference. And I can pick up the phone every now and then and say, look, I've got this problem, what do you think? And she's always ready to lend an ear. And the other one is my brother, who unfortunately is not with us anymore. But he was a twice over tech entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley. And so quite often I would pick up the phone and ask for his advice, and he was able to really help me. So that really has made a difference to be able to just bounce, ideas and problems off another person. The one key thing that my brother used to always say to me was, you've got three main jobs as a CEO, Sharon, of a tech company. The first thing is make sure the product is right. Make sure you've got the right people, and always make sure you've got enough money. Look after the money. So those were the three. If anything else, Sharon, those are the three things is what you should be concentrating on.
Yeah. I want to just kind of double click on the mentor piece, because I think it's such a challenge for people just to get access to people. I think once you find the right person, they'll usually give their time and their advice freely, right? And want to help and see you as part of the journey. But there has to be, I think, some form of connection there or introduction first. With Melissa, how did you go about getting that connection?
So that was through Head Over Heels.
Right.
Yeah, so I met her through that association.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful association.
Yeah.
And they're really very supportive of women. Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point that you make, is more and more I'm seeing first-time founders joining networking groups, not necessarily to go and find customers,
no,
just to be around,
like-minded
founders, like-minded people.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think you realize, I'd see this all the time, Sharon, with CEOs is, oftentimes you're the filling in a shit sandwich. Mm-hmm. And you think you're the only CEO that's the filling in a shit sandwich until you find out that all of you are, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you've all got the same problems. Yeah. And being able to ask for help too.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to ask for help.
Yeah.
I wish I had asked for help earlier.
That's a good point, actually, because it's not as simple as saying, hey, I need some help. Can you give me some help? What are your tips on the right way to ask for help?
I don't know. I guess being honest. And I suppose there's always that fear if you ask for help that you're showing yourself to be vulnerable, but that's okay. We all need help and we are vulnerable. So
I'm looking startled, right? And it's not because he's talking about vulnerable, but it's the fact that by its very nature, being a leader is being vulnerable.
Yes.
You're putting yourself out there, right?
That's right, exactly.
That's why you're a leader, right? You're kind of apart from the pack.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, I think just not being afraid to put your hand up and say, I actually need help. I think the other thing that has always resonated with me with quotes is it's a very cliche quote, but I think it's really relevant, is Steve Jobs, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I need to be probably the dumbest person in the room. I need to be surrounded by very smart people.
And I think that's kind of really hard, right, for founders, because by the very nature of being a founder, you have to have an ego. Otherwise, there's no way you would
do it. Yes. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Yeah.
Right? And I think it's only kind of learning the lessons that you then, and the mistakes as you talk about. And I've done it myself, right? So many times,
Yeah, I should have known better.
Right?
I know.
Moron, right? Like you had people that and trust who super smart, telling you this stuff, and you were insistent that you could do it a different way and be successful, right? So I think those moments, you kind of the ego
gets in the way,
erodes, right? The more mistakes that you make, and I think you kind of if you then kind of. Yeah, your intelligence improves once you let go of the ego, I find.
Yeah, I think you have to be humble.
In terms of the business now and where you're at, how many people is Prospend?
So we've got about 40 on our team now. So we've got the usual suspects. We've got, a sales and marketing team. Yeah. We've got, a whole bunch of developers because we're still in very high development mode. We have a customer success team who look after our customers and a product team. So we've got product and UX UI. So a fully rounded out tech company.
Right.
Is where we're at now.
So this structure that you've got then, it's very much a traditional tech. Say traditional or tech SaaS style structure. Having not come from that environment, how did you figure out the types of people that you needed to bring in and what skills you needed and when you needed them?
I think that's probably one of the hardest things is, what's the next hire? Do I now go and hire, a sales and marketing, team lead? Do I now go and hire a product manager? I guess as the business has evolved and as the business has come in, we've just realized that, we need another, position. We need, another role to be undertaken. So that's what we've aimed at, and it's sort of just been, I guess, a bit natural.
And so without a CTO founder, because this is the other thing that you're going to hear is, you go to raise money, you don't have a CTO founder, Sharon. Go and find one. We might consider investing in you. Yep. How did you build the platform, make sure it worked, all of those things without having a technology background and without having a CTO founder with you?
Yeah, I mean, I have had somebody in the business for quite a number of years who was running the development environment, and so obviously they ran that that part of the business, but the IP, I guess, and the conception behind that and the vision was always something that I did, and then obviously I had a bunch of people, smart people to build it.
Yeah, and it's incredible, right? Because I think of this situation and I just think there isn't a single VC in Australia that would have written a check for anybody going there with this, right?
No.
And yet here we are. You're sat, you built a business, 40 people, KFC is your first client. You've gone and kind of won all your customers. You've built the platform yourself without any kind of read, it's certainly the experience that you would, expect, a VC to want to invest in. And yet you've made it all a success. It's kind of like it flies in the face of
exactly. Yeah, a bit of an outlier, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, we did try to get money initially. So after having the product around for about 2 years, I thought, you know what? Maybe I should go and get some VC money, and really supercharge this. But I did the rounds. I did the rounds of most of them and got knocked back every single time. I think there was a couple of reasons that I don't think I sold it well enough. And I think that's something that women don't do very well. They don't sell themselves enough. So I don't think I sold it well enough. And I don't think I had the confidence that I have now today. So, for any, women in tech these days, they absolutely have to be very, very confident to overcome that perception that VCs have about women in business. But I also had a couple of global competitors, and that really scared the VCs here. They just could not think that a local product could beat the global competitors, which is sad.
Yeah.
And I think that is sad because, the VC community here, I think, should be backing local tech because we have the ability to do it. And I think the VCs from overseas actually like to invest in Australian companies because I think the thing that really is great about Aussie companies is we've got a lot of grit and determination and resilience. And I think, like you said, how did I get to this point? I just never thought about giving up. I was just too stubborn to throw in the towel, basically. And I think that is a bit of an Aussie attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think, we've got way too much emphasis on startup. And what I mean is early stage stuff, accelerators, all these funds for seed ideas. And yet there isn't anything really to support businesses once they're beyond that point.
Yeah, there is a gap, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And look, the reality is it has never, ever been easier to start a business. And I don't mean to sound facetious there. I get that, some people are going to have more struggles than others, are going to have to take on more risk. But the reality is, if you look at 20 years back versus now and how affordable technology is, and you don't have to have your own servers and you don't have to have all this stuff. And the fact that you can actually build a prototype and you could get it out in the hands of customers within a weekend and make money. I think it's, that I think is a time we've never, ever, none of us have ever had.
Yeah. And just things like, back sort of 10, 15 years ago, if you had stumped up to a large company and said, oh, no, the business is a home office, they would have laughed you out the door. Yeah. Whereas now bigger companies are now quite, okay, so it is a home office location, but I will accept it. I don't have to have an office to go and visit them in their office. So,
but even 2016, when I launched my business, it was like, got a Martin Place address just to put
on the letterhead.
It was a little tiny little desk, but it was Martin Place. So it was like, give the illusion of But it's true, right? I mean, all of those things now you don't even have to think about. It's just just go and build the product, solve the problem.
That's right. You don't have to have an office. Everybody can work remotely,
You talked about being a woman founder, and what do you see as being the reasons why, and how do we make it, I don't want to say easier because I don't think starting a business should be easy, but it should be accessible. How do you think we make it more accessible and palatable for females to want to go and take that risk take that on?
Yeah. Look, I joined up with an organisation which was called Head Over Heels, which is now rebranded to Propeller. That was a game changer for me because it gave me an opportunity to be in a group where it was all about women-led businesses and supporting them and giving them the confidence and the skills to succeed and being able to meet up and network with people that you need introductions to. So I think those sort of organisations are going to be invaluable for women who are in or thinking about joining or creating a business. More of those organisations would really, really help, I think. Yeah. And I think a lot of VCs now too are also, there is a tide that is turning now, whereas the VCs now I think are, do look at women founders a lot more favourably than they ever did, which is great to see.
Yeah. And look, this isn't to simplify. I think it's a really complex problem, and there's a lot of things that are going on, right? Like societal issues that we still haven't got our heads around. And I think you've only got to look at the media and how they've, almost punished female leaders and founders, to see that it's not a level playing field. And also, why would you want to be subjected to some of the abuse that you see out there online? I mean, it's terrible. I see it with, female guests that we have on the podcast and, the feedback that I get. And, generally I have to ask somebody 3 or 4 times to be on the show. And, that thing that you talked about, confidence, is it a confidence issue? I think it's actually more of a safety issue that there's just some absolute lunatics out there online who just let rip.
Yeah, I think you've got to have a fairly thick skin if you're going to put yourself into the public eye. Yeah, anybody does. I think, but I think on the confidence level, I think most women, or not most women, but some women do need to take it up a level and say, I can do this, and have more confidence in themselves.
How do you think guys can do a better job of being part of the solution?
You know what? I think just being conscious of the problem, I think is probably a big start, because there is still such an inequity with the way men perceive women and women in business. And I'll give you an example, and I don't, this is not to have a go at men, but this was
please have a go at us. Right? We deserve it. We're absolute morons, right?
This was a classic case of how it goes down. I was at an event, and somebody came into the group who was introducing themselves to 3 of us, and there was myself and 2 men, and they were there to meet us. I was one of the sort of the closest to this person, and the person coming, which was literally leaned over me and introduced himself to the 2 men first and shook their hands first. And I just was if I had been the man standing closest, he would have shook my hand first. Yeah. And look, and he was not being nasty or anything. It was just, that was the default position as a man that he had. So I think men you just need to be conscious of it. Just conscious of the way that you think about women in business.
Moving forwards, making it more palatable for females to become founders. Is there other things that can, like one of the challenges, for example, the pay gap, right? It's like, it's real. It's got worse since the GFC. As a husband, a dad, a business owner, I would love for that to be parity, right? It would take a lot of heat off me as well, right? I think most guys out there would want to see this being kind of balanced. And also, I feel having my wife having supported me to go out and make my dreams come true of starting a business, if that's what her dreams were, I'd want to help make that happen for her as well.
Well, we just have to stomp it out. There should
Yeah.
be no inequality with pay.
Yeah.
You know, there just should not be there. We
Yeah.
just have to call it out all the time. I mean, every single person in my organisation just gets paid. You know, but you get paid on your skill set as well.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just get paid more or less because of, you know, your gender.
Yeah.
It has to be based on skill set. But if you've got somebody with exactly the same skills, whether they're a male or female, they should be paid
Yeah.
absolutely equal. There's no doubt about that. We just have to call it out.
On that, one of the challenges that I see, particularly for maybe it's not as experienced founders, is, you know, they've fallen into this trap where they see like a superstar developer, they pay them more money than everybody else. Turns out that they're not a superstar. And all of a sudden you've set this precedence whereby, you know, somebody's getting paid more, and it then really screws up any opportunity that you've got of having a, you know, what I would say is a structured kind of REM program. How have you gone about ensuring kind of fairness, but also being able to get the right people as well? Because as you pointed out, right, it's like we all have the right to go and negotiate what we want as a salary as an individual as well.
Yeah. Look, typically as a startup, we've never been able to afford the top end town wages. We just have not. You know, and there's been sometimes we've had really great people coming to us. We just can't afford it. It's just bottom line. So we make sure that what we offer is, you know, still a good wage, but we try and back that up with other benefits, like, you know, we do a recharge day every quarter. They take a day off on their birthday. You know, we have a bonus scheme in place. We do events and volunteer days, and so we try and make it not just about the salary. Also, it's about the environment that we've got.
And what about the mission and being part of actually building something? Have you found that that's been a kind of useful tool in attracting the right type of person?
Definitely. Everybody that comes here, and I interview every single person that comes into this organisation. They usually go through, you know, sort of a first, you know, qualifying. But I want to speak to everybody on that second interview because I want to know why they want to come here. Because, you know, I want people that come here because they want to make a difference and they want to enjoy the role.
Yeah.
And generally, because we are a small organisation, you know, they want to come where they can make a difference and they can be heard and they can have input. So I think that's and often it might be, you know, that's better than the top end wage, is because you actually got a quality with your role and you feel like you're making a difference. So. Yeah.
And you're based out at Norwest, which obviously isn't a hotbed of fintech organizations. How difficult has that been, from a location perspective in finding the right people?
It's so funny because anybody that's from the city or the other side always think, you know, you say we're out in Norwest and it's like, where is that?
Yeah.
But like you came out today.
Does it have an airport?
Yeah. It's an incredible area.
Yeah.
I mean, the Norwest Business Park is simply huge. Yeah. It is enormous.
I said that to you coming in. I haven't been here for 9 years and it was like a mini metropolis.
It is. Right? It absolutely is. So yes, it can be the downside where you've got people that want to go and work in the city. So that's just not us, right? Yeah. We are out here, but the people that are out here and work for us love living out here. They're close to home. You know, they commute like 15, 20 minutes. They're at the office. They've got free parking. So there's the pros and the cons, isn't there?
Yeah. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about your perceptions of fintech in Australia. As you mentioned before, you kind of put yourself out there, having been head down, bum up, just building the business. As you've kind of gone out there and met with businesses, what is your kind of sense as to where we're at and kind of what potentially we need to do better?
I think it's a very nervous time, for anybody involved in startups and technology because, the funding has dried up and now there is that focus on profitability.
Yeah.
And so for people that started, their startup 2 or 3 years ago, now all of a sudden they're being asked to make sure they're profitable.
Yeah.
And so for the first time ever, it's about, are we actually going to, which I think is a good thing anyway, to be honest with you. I think it's a bit of a correction we probably should have had, because ultimately you have to make a profit, at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to also have that supercharged growth as well, but there does always need to be an eye to actually making a profit. So I think it's a very interesting time, not just for the startups, but for the VCs as well.
I think what's really interesting about what you've just said there, Sharon, is I've seen this reflected in all of the recruitment that I've been involved in the last 12 months. Where the kind of remit has gone from growth at all costs to cut costs at all costs, but we still want to grow. We still have to, grow revenue. Yeah. And the challenge that I've got is that there's a whole generation who've built their career where it has been growth at all costs. And if you're a head of growth, you're kind of spending a $2 million social ad budget to get a bunch of likes and shares and some email addresses. And that's kind of your return on investment.
Yeah.
Now the expectation is, hey, well, we want to see 3 times, what we spend on ads in revenue.
Yeah.
And people just don't have that, or a lot of people don't have that experience and never experienced that environment.
Got to go and learn it.
Yeah.
At the moment, you have to go back and learn that.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that's going to keep you going over the next 2 or 3 years. Because I don't think the market condition is going to change dramatically in the next year or so.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and we talked about this, touched on it a little bit earlier, is the name change.
Mm-hmm.
It can be almost like a business wrecking decision to make, and especially when you got something like expense manager and the SEO value that brings. Do you regret the decision, or are you happy that you changed the name?
No, don't regret it at all. Yes, it was very nerve-wracking, and we definitely took a dip on Google.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, but you can't just rely on...
I mean, you could wake up tomorrow and take a dip because Google's changed the algorithm.
Exactly,
right?
That's right. So but the issue that we had was that we were actually getting a lot of customers and business partners and people in general would just say, the name does, your product doesn't suit the name anymore. We had just literally outgrown that name.
Yeah. So
we knew it was time to make that change. It took us forever to come up with the name, I have to tell you. Literally, I think, 6-7 months. We called in an agency, spent a whole bunch of money with them. They didn't come up with anything. We had an internal, competition with all the staff to come up with a name. I sat on the couch for 6 months every Saturday for about 2 hours every Saturday trying to think of a name, because you can't just come up with a name. As you know, it's got to be, you've got to be able to get the .com, the .com.au. It's got to be trademark safe. It's got to make sense. So it was very, very hard. But we finally nailed it, and no, absolutely don't have any hesitation. And even when we decided on that Prospend, it just made sense. Like it just rolled off our tongue, so we just knew it was right.
Yeah, and you talked about your early days in the business, and how back then you could go on cold call. We are at a point where everybody does have to focus on revenue and growth and customer. What things have you changed to your kind of customer acquisition strategy now, if going out and doing cold calling and that side doesn't work?
So we were very fortunate in the early days as I said, because we came up on Google ranking, brilliantly. So we were just getting leads in through Google so easily. But then obviously more competitors came into the market. We couldn't rely just on Google. So we knew we also had to we had to push out to the market. So we've done a lot more push out to the market than we've ever done before to make sure that we can continue to grow. We also introduced a reseller channel that was very good for us.
Yeah.
So anybody that's in B2B SaaS, enterprise SaaS, a reseller channel is a really good avenue, building up that network of people. But we are constantly working it.
Yeah.
You just have to constantly try something if that doesn't work, try something new if that doesn't work, And it's top of mind for everybody. Every SaaS company out there at the moment is, how do I build my pipeline?
Yeah. That reseller point that you made, there's still a lot of work that goes into that once the deal's signed as well.
Yes. We've had to cultivate relationships over the years. So we have one gentleman here who's just our channel partner manager, and that's all he does is just make sure that all our partners are happy and that we're engaged with them. And obviously there is there's a reward. We put in a commission level for them to introduce business to us. But we've got to make sure that we're adding value to them as well and assisting them with their growth.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen overnight. It's like anything, Dexter. Nothing happens overnight, does it?
Yeah, well, we're talking about another 10-year overnight success story.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you look kind of towards the next 10 years, what do you see, kind of as the plans, and what's the big vision for Prospend?
So we want to continue to build the platform out so that we're adding more value to our customers. We've just launched into payments. So we've added virtual cards onto our platform, and we're going to launch payments. So our clients will be able to actually pay their suppliers out of Prospend. So we will continue to ask our CFOs, what else do you want to automate? And we will continue to do that. We've got so many things that we can still do. So much AI is just an amazing product now that, all of us can now use, and that really aids with automation and digitization and giving really meaningful insights. So definitely we will just continue to build the product. We may diverge into, so maybe a slightly different area, but still very, very much focused on that main product. And, obviously we do sort of think about, should we go global? It crosses our mind. We think about it every year. We're probably a bit closer to it.
And if that was the case, would you be US first, or do you think you might go a bit closer to Australia?
No, I think UK.
Right.
Yeah, I think UK would suit us really, really well. Very hard to go to the US.
Yeah.
That's a big, it's 52 countries, isn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty much.
Yeah, that's right. But no, I think we could sit very nicely within the UK.
Brilliant. Well, we're coming to a wrap, Sharon. I really enjoyed sharing this story. As I mentioned at the beginning, these are the ones that really kind of get me out of bed in the morning. And it's just it's so refreshing just to hear of people breaking the stereotypes, right? And I think it's just so important that we keep sharing these stories, right? And these examples, because the more we just share these stories, the more accessible it becomes to people, and the more that we kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah, but I think we also just need to continue to say that it's not easy, and it's not overnight, Dexter. Just because you're going to get a bunch of VC money that you're going to prove it and you're going to in a couple of years, it just doesn't happen that way. You look at Apple, you look at all of the big companies around. They've been around for 20 plus. Before, some of them were around 10 plus before they even made a mark. So it's just nonsense to think that you can be huge within a couple of years. It's a long haul, and it's a lot of sleepless nights, and it's a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work, and just don't underestimate that effort that it takes.
And I think as well, we've kind of made this massive thing about building a unicorn.
Yes. I know.
It's selling a business, owning 100% of a business that you sell for $50 million.
What's wrong with that?
Kind of pretty darn
pretty cool. Exactly. That's right. We can't all be the unicorns. We can't. And you're right. And sometimes the market is just not there to be a unicorn anyway. But like you said, if you can exit, at a 50 million or an 80 million valuation, that's a really good damn achievement.
Yeah. Now, Sharon, we're listened to in over 40 countries. If anybody's listening and they do like the sound of the mission that you're on, and also they might live out here and they kind of want somewhere a bit closer to home, what's the best way for them to find out about careers at Prospend? Absolutely. We are always looking for people. We're still hiring. They can reach out to me, Sharon@prospend.com. Awesome. And we do get VC and investors listening to this as well. If anybody wants to write you a check.
Same thing, Sharon at prospend.com.
Well, Sharon, it's been great to chat. Thanks for inviting me out here. It's been really lovely to talk. As always, folks, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and the platform formerly known as Twitter. If you're new to the show, make sure you give us a follow on your favorite podcast player, and please leave a review. It really helps me in promoting great guests like Sharon and great Aussie businesses like Prospend. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. It really does mean a lot to me. And until the next episode, keep well. Fintech Chatter is produced by Tier 1 people, leaders in Fintech executive search. We'll find world-class leadership talent to build world-class Fintech ventures. And you can find us at tier1people.com.